you have been involved in the capacity of an astrophotographer for a long time. So I was wondering if you could tell us how astrophotography is different or distinct from other kinds of photography.
A very low light photography. Sky at night is very dark, but it holds a lot of treasure. So you need to optimize your equipment for a lot of light gathering. That means the aperture has to be kept as wide as possible, and the ISO, the sensitivity of the sensor has to be kept at its highest uh, just before the noise kicks in, and the exposures sometimes run into minutes. So if you are shooting at a dark place with a camera and a lens on a tripod, that means you are shooting a night landscape. Then the exposures can be of the order of 30 seconds or so. But if you're shooting deep sky objects, then the exposures can go up to about 10 minutes sometimes. And then you have to follow the deep sky objects along its path in the skies. Astrophotography is also shows you what cannot be seen with the naked eye. So sometimes there are objects in the sky like deep sky objects or maybe nebulae. Like if you with your naked eye, if you see Orion, it is just a bunch of bright stars in a very distinctive pattern. But when you go and photograph it, you see that there's a lot of gas and dust present in the region of the Orion constellations, and it takes a completely different view of. There's Orion Nebula, then there's a Horsehead Nebula, and the Bernard's Loop, and on top of the Orion constellation, you have uh, the Orion molecular cloud. So it takes a different hue and view altogether. Astrophotography is also a very long duration photography, so it shows the time moment. So let me share an example with you. Suppose at night you will set up your camera on the side of the road, and vehicles are passing by, and you take an exposure which is slightly longer, maybe just a couple of seconds, 2 or 3 seconds. What you see on the road is that the vehicle is moving, and what you have captured is the line of the headlight or the tail light. You have captured the 2 seconds of that car moving from one position to the other. So
Mm.
similarly, when we photograph the sky, uh, we are capturing for hours together, and we see movement of stars in the form of star trails. I go out at places and keep my camera on for the entire night. And at the end of the effort, what you get is star trails. Like if you're if you're pointing the camera towards the north, then you get circular star trails. If you're pointing the camera towards the east or the west, then you get straight lines coming out of the horizon. And the southern direction is another view. So you are capturing time, movement across the sky. I started astronomy when I was very young, and my initial years in astronomy were solely visual. I used to watch the sky with rudimentary telescopes, and that made a solid foundation for recognizing the constellations and where the Milky Way is, how the sky behaves from one time to another, in the morning, evening, seasons. Progress these days is killing the sky because a lot of lights. When I was young, there used to be citywide load shedding. The entire city would go black, and that's the time when we could see the stars. And now progress is there. Even if there is load shedding or inverters take over, then you're never able to see the sky. Even if you go to
Mm.
the hills nowadays, the cities are growing and growing. Oh, well, cities can grow, but the light should be kept to a minimum.
there are groups of amateur astronomers who are also chasing phenomena, and they're keeping track of all the occultations. And there's so much planning and patience that also goes into capturing a certain event. So I was just wondering if you have any specific experiences around capturing any particular event that you'd like to share.
There is one exceptional event which occurred last year in June, on June 21st, which was the annular eclipse passing over India. And I had started planning to watch this particular eclipse, which was passing over India, 10 years ahead. The path of the eclipse was crossing India as well as Pakistan and China. But in India, the path of the eclipse was going over Rajasthan and the cities of Suratgarh, and then the path would cross into Haryana and Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand, and thereafter it would go on to China and Tibet. The
Right.
special thing about this eclipse was that the size of the sun and the moon was almost equal. It was an annular eclipse. And I made my plans to be at the center of this eclipse, which was falling near Oli in Uttarakhand at a place called Gorsan Bugyal. So that was my choice destination. Here I would have to trek because you can't drive to Gorsan Bugyal and trek with all the equipment. So I was all excited and my planning continued. But who would have expected that 2020 was a year of pandemic and all travel was restricted. Finally, what happened was that I traveled to Sirsa, and from there I photographed this eclipse. And again, the eclipse was happening on 21st June. So on this date, the eclipse is at its highest point. In the year, in December, it goes down, and 21st June is the solstice, June solstice. So it was at its highest point. So I thought of an opportunity that I could make an analemma. An analemma is photographing the sun every day, and the position of the sun changes. And after a year, you get an image which is like a figure of eight. But this analemma would be special because right on top, on 21st June, the image of the sun would be eclipsed. So this kind of image which I made is called a tutulemma. And this has been done only once before in the world by a friend of mine, another astrophotographer, Tunç Tezel of Turkey. In fact, he also guided me a little bit. So that was a pinnacle of planning. So much planning went into it.
So I'm just wondering if there are any challenges that you have faced in terms of being an amateur astronomer or an astrophotographer, and how you deal with decisions around quality of an image in terms of how well it captures the event that you have planned.
The greatest technical problem that I face is focusing. In when you shoot photographs at daytime, these days cameras are able to focus on their own, but they fail at night. So focusing has to be done manually. And looking at the screen behind the live view screen, you really have to be patient. And as you can see, I wear glasses, and that again is a problem. So I have solved that problem by carrying a little bit lens, a magnifying glass with which you usually read the dictionary. I carry that in my camera bag. I'm one of the photographers in a group called TWAN, TWAN, which stands for the World at Night. This is a group of about 40 photographers from around the world, and the major emphasis of TWAN photography is capturing the earth and the sky at night. So we usually go to uh, renowned places, ancient places, monuments, and then we photograph it along with planets and moon and stars in the sky. So I live in near Delhi, and Delhi is full of monuments. It is my endeavor to photograph these at night. But wherever I go, I find restrictions. You cannot enter the complex, and the monument is always surrounded by a fence, and there are a lot of street lights, bare street lights. So these are my problems I face. But on the other hand, India has the highest mountains in the world, like the Himalayas. So whenever I go to Himalayas like Himachal Pradesh or Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh, and Uttarakhand, I find exceptional places which are dark and full of natural beauty. And there I am able to capture fantastic photographs without any trouble.